Let's go with talking about service level agreement. So just keeping this in mind now, I'm not going to, can I do it? Because if I do, I don't want to be, yeah, I don't want to launch the yeah, see, that's why I'm not going to, see, because that is the I've recorded last year talking over these slides. So I'm going to leave that with you so you can refer to it um, later as a alternate. You'll see that I'll probably, because when I do these things, I don't have a written script. So I just sort of speak to it. So no doubt I would have spoken to it differently last time than I will this time. Um, so the point that I want to make is that the service level agreement is kind of like a contract. So usually we're talking about a service level agreement between an IT department, a service desk, which has also been called a help desk, service desk, and the rest of the organization. And so the thing is, the service desk is providing a service. It's doing that for another part of the organization. They may be part of the same organization, but actually this is not going to work, is it? I've got to get out of that and just do it this way. It's part of the same organization, but they have agreement between them. So we're offering them a service. There is responsibilities for us in the service the service desk, and there's responsibilities for our customers. And that's all outlined very clearly in the service level agreement. So the service level agreement is to capture all of that information for the customer. Now, it references here part of the vendor onboarding process. So from the point of view, there would be if you are an organization and you want to get an external service desk for you, you could call that a vendor, I suppose. You would have a contract with them. Also, the service desk itself is going to have vendors which act as level 3 support, and so that they would include that in their service level agreement. So it talks about formalizing. Yeah, it's a formal agreement. We use the word contract because it does have sort of some legal weight within the organization. Now, I worked in a telephone company, and we had many different departments, and one of the departments was the IT department. And I worked there, and the job that I had there was as an account executive, and actually we had to develop these service level agreements. Now, that might sound well, yeah, we never changed any money. There was no money changing hands. We had sort of internal credit. So we never changed money. We never took money from them, but the service level agreement was written in money terms. And so we did put a value on the services that were provided. And so we had this system that we called internal transfer. So it was like there was money, but and that's how we ran our organization based on that. But the other departments, they were customer facing. That is, they were dealing with retail customers and wholesale customers who are actually paying money to the company, but we weren't in the service desk. We weren't. We actually, when I worked there, we called it client services, but we had all of our money came from within. And so it's kind of funny money, I guess you would say. Now, you may have seen this term before, and maybe even in some other class, the request for proposal. So that could relate to a new product or service, and that would attract the attention of the service desk. And there may even be as part of the service desk, the service level agreement, there may even be a reference to that request for proposal there. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to see in a service level agreement. So we're going to define the service level agreement and talk about these things: why we have a service level agreement, what's recorded in it, etc. Okay. All right, so it's formal. So as I said, it has a sort of a legal aspect to it, describing a level of service that the customer expects from a service provider. Now, I mentioned you an example of a service level agreement between a service desk and an internal customer where no real money was changing hands, though we did quantify things. Other service level agreements you may have come across and you might not even noticed too closely is, for example, if you have a company like Arido, and so phone companies are ones that this applies to particularly. With their customers, they have different services at different levels. So service level. So for example, what I mean by that is one customer might just get the basic sort of phone connection, right? Another one might get extra megabits or gigabits of download. Another might have 5G or whatever. Each of those is a different service, and it would have a different price point, and it would have a different service level agreement. Now, that service level agreement, when you go and you offer them your ID card and you sign up for the service, that service level agreement is there. Most people don't even read it, right? Part of the reason is it's kind of like, take it or leave it, right? Here we're offering you the service. If you don't like this, you can go across to Vodafone, but we're probably better. It's that kind of approach, right? But there is a service level agreement there, and if you had a look, you'd see that it would describe the level of service that you're offered, and it would describe things like you will be able to call Arido for help on this number 121 or 101 or 111, and this is this level of service that you'll get. You'll be able to talk to them either 24 hours a day or whatever that service is. That will be mentioned in that service level agreement. Now, in an organization like College of North Atlantic, we would have a service level agreement with the people downstairs, or that's what we had in the phone company where I worked. Then that would be a little bit more of a bigger service level agreement, because there will be a lot more things that need to be sort of discussed, because there's a lot of services. It's not just one particular service. So it's going to specify what the performance is. Now that performance there's going to be lots of measurements in it, and what everybody who's a party to the service level agreement has to do. Their responsibilities. So responsibilities of the people in the service desk, but also responsibilities of the people who are receiving the service, the customers, I guess you could say, and how we're going to measure that. So it needs to be clear. Yeah, there's just, I'm going to kind of skip over that a little bit. But here's an example of one. I don't know if you've heard of Amazon Web Services, but Amazon and several other companies provide sort of services so that people can move their IT operations offsite onto the cloud. And so there'll be lots of different services that are provided. So for example, they'll provide a service which is you can just keep all your data here, or they'll provide another service where you can keep your data here and you can do your applications here. And so you can have a service that is almost complete, where everything is kept on their cloud server, and people like it because it's scalable. We say it's scalable because you can start with offering a certain level, or a certain throughput, or a certain population of users, and then that can grow over time, and you pay a monthly amount. And then if you come across hard times financially, you can sort of just stop paying them, as opposed to building, and you close down the service, as opposed to building your own IT department and buying lots of equipment and buildings and network connections, which is going to be a very expensive thing. And if you have to scale down that service, you got a lot of this equipment sort of sitting around, and what are you going to do with that, right? So there are these cloud providers, and they are very careful with their service level agreements. And here's one here. The service level agreement is separate to each account, and there's a lot of details there about the service level agreement. Every party in the agreement must have its own responsibilities fully described in the service level agreement. About the metrics, they're going to be things like availability. So we will promise as an IT department, we promise to you, the departments of this organization, that we're going to have a 99.9% availability. So that means that 0.01% of the time the system might be down. But it won't be down any more than that. And usually, so we're going to measure that, and that's not hard to measure. we can just measure the times when people find that the availability is not there. And then if the level goes below the level that we've agreed to, then usually there's going to be some kind of responsibility and penalty involved. So let's look at some of these things that we can measure. We can measure availability. And so availability could be for hardware or network or software. And I hope you got the idea what availability is. It just means that this service is available to you. When you go to use it, you won't find that it's down. So I mean, pretty self-explanatory. And the expectations, as you can see, well, you might think, if I got 90% in an exam, I'd feel pretty good. But if I got 90% in a availability measure, and you are depending on your network, that might not be very good at all. And so here, let's look at an example. 90% availability, or 1.9. In a year, you'd be able to be down 36 days. I think you could see that would not really work for a lot of businesses, right? Okay, so you could be careful with that. You could, yeah. So this, when we measure availability, we're not talking about planned sort of downtime, right? So like, I mean, I get these SMS from the bank all the time, customers, at the start of Eid or whatever, the bank will not be available. Yeah, okay, we sort of accept that, and they're kind of, yeah. That's a terrible thing about working in a IT department, in the networking department, right? Is when everybody else is on holiday, you got to go and do work, because that's when you're going to do all your installations and stuff. Well, everybody else is out enjoying themselves. That's kind of terrible, but that's okay. Usually they get paid okay for it. But you think about it. Let's say you're running a bank and the bank was offline 36 days in the year, you'd go out of business. So 90% availability is not really all that good. If you're a bank, you're really going to be looking at, down here in these percents here, right? Yeah, 52 minutes a day in a year. Well, that's not very much. Now, bearing in mind, this is not for planned sort of upgrades and things like this. We're talking about availability where it's down when it was unplanned. And so we talk about these numbers here. We talk about the 4 nines, for example. If you're in a bank, that might be acceptable. Now, but think about it. How much more expensive would it be? How much more expensive would it be to in your business to provide a service that is only down 1 minute a week, as opposed to one which is down 17 hours a week? I mean, I think you can see that that's going to require all kinds of redundancy of equipment and backup power and all kinds of things. And so it becomes to approach these very, very high availability numbers, you have a very, very high investment. And of course, because it costs so much, that's going to have to be written into the service level agreement, and the customer's going to have to pay for that. Okay, so there's some examples. Unscheduled downtime. This talks about penalties. So kind of like the way building contractors contracts work. I don't know if any of you have any family or friends that are in business in building construction, but generally they have a date where you sign the contract signed, and you have to, in the contract, you will complete this building thing by such and such a date. And if there's an overrun, if you don't meet the date that you promised that you would have that done by, then there's a penalty. I mean, and so you actually have to pay the people who you're building the stuff for because of their inconvenience. Well, that's usually built into the service level agreement. So for example, you may, if you had, 480 minutes, so divide that by 60, that's 8 hours. If you had 8 hours of downtime, you might have to offer them a free service for a whole month. That would be typical in a service level agreement for contract. And so we talked about availability. There's some other things that we measure them on. Defect rates, that would be particularly true if you're having a software. Technical quality, that could be for hardware, software, or network. And of course, security. So in other words, we're saying if your security lapses on your network, on your software, on your system, then there could be a penalty to the service desk because of that. Now about escalation, I hope that you've already got an idea about escalation, but If you looked at the OTRS software that I had you guys, you just kind of skimmed the surface of it, but there is built into it escalation. But most of you guys, I've already got something from you in an assignment or whatever there, where we talked a little bit about escalation, and you got the idea of, all right, so if we can't solve this at this point, we will put it up to level 2. And if it's not solved there, then we can put it up to level 3. That's fine, bearing in mind that level 2 is our systems engineers and level 3 is our vendors. The other part of escalation is actually pushing it up through the hierarchy of the organization. That means that if the service level service agent at level 1 is not able to solve the incident, that the manager becomes involved. So that's another form of escalation. And that is built into things like the incident management system in OTRS. Okay. I hope you got that idea all right. So because it is a contract, service level agreement is a contract, all the costs and penalties are mentioned, and that was referred to in a previous slide as well. So exclusions have to be included in the service level agreement if you're going to promise to have 99.9% availability of your network and your systems. Just like the bank, you're going to have times where you have to upgrade the software, upgrade the hardware, and you're going to do that at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Friday or something like that, just like they do with the roads. And so, but that will be written into the service level agreement as well. And so that makes it so that the customer can plan for it, and so that the service desk and the IT department can plan for it. Now, this review is not talking about a review of this lesson. This review is talking about review as a chapter as part of the service level agreement. The idea being that we know that the systems that we're providing service to our customers change from time to time. The needs of the customer changes, the abilities and technical availability changes from the point of view of the service desk. And so we need to be able to review the service level agreement. And so there might be some time involved in that. So after 6 months, we'll have a meeting, or maybe we'll have a monthly meeting, and issues will arise. And then when the issues arise to a certain level, then we'll be able to review and change the service level agreement. So that's what we mean by that. So the next couple of slides there is, if you are given the job that you have to create a service level agreement, how will you know when you're done? How will you know when your service level agreement is correct or got everything in it that you need? And so this is what you could do. You could use a checklist, and you could say, all right, does my service level agreement have the objectives included? Are all the people, all the parts of the organization, or external customers, level 3 vendors, etc., are they all mentioned in the service level agreement? Are the responsibilities of those people mentioned? The people who will be signing the agreement, who take ultimate responsibility, are they mentioned? The time period of the service level agreement, usually it's like a year, but it might not be. It might be 2 years, or it might be a few months. Is that clearly stated in the service level agreement? Every term that we're using, maybe we've got some technical terms that are new because we're using some new technology. Those things have to be mentioned in the service agreement and explained. So more things, all the services that are provided need to be defined, the times that they're available, service exclusions. That was just a previous slide. How do we change things? What if somebody wants an upgrade of their software? How does that offered? How is that charged? What guarantees are there? All of those things need to be mentioned in the service level agreement. What if there is a downtime? How is that managed? Okay, so the escalation procedures. What if a incident occurs and it can't be solved within 20 hours or 2 hours or whatever is in the service level agreement? What happens then? Where does it go? Does it go to level 2? Does it go to the manager? Does it go to both? All that needs to be in the service level agreement. Who's going to be, who do we contact in the event of? In the event of, who is going to be the person? And so managers of the service desk will be there, but also managers of the customer department. Okay. This has to do with the metrics. service targets, how quickly will emails be answered? How long will it take from the time that our customer makes a phone call to us until we open a ticket? How many ticket, this type of thing. How long will it take us to close a ticket, before we escalate it? All of those things. So that's our service targets. How are we going to monitor it? Are we going to use monitoring on the remote monitoring of the devices in our networks, or are we going to have something a little bit more intervention of sort of management, looking at this at the service agents and checking their work? How often are we going to report back to our customers? Are we going to have a monthly report that we send to them and say this is how things are going? How do we audit it? To make sure that that's basically about keeping us honest. And the quality assurance, of course, is about continual improvement. So what systems do we have to make sure that things are improving? And that's going to require bringing people together in meetings, etc. How do we handle complaints? So what happens if the performance is bad? And so that needs to be mentioned as well. Hopefully the performance won't be bad, but it could be. Now, so this is just to point out to you that I didn't bring that stuff off the top of my head. My thanks to Susan Cole-Halson, who put an article that I found that covered these points. So that's just to remind you again where we are in the course. You have a project to do. There's like 7 tasks part of that project, and then there's a presentation of the project. The presentation has to be before the 7th of April, because the 7th of April we start exams. When I say we start exams, I mean for all your other courses, and for me for all my other courses. There is no exam in this course, there is the project. But in addition to that, I've given you this week 5 tasks, maybe whatever it is. So yeah, I think you're right. Sorry, I'm probably confusing it with another course. The number of tasks are there. 5 sounds right too. Sorry, Ali. So we've got our 5 tasks. You're working on those now. Some people have finished task 4. Task 5 will probably be something about what we just talked about now. Then you have an assignment, and the assignment I've given you is just sort of, you're going to answer some questions, not about service level agreements, but about something else. So have a look at that, find that, answer that, and hand that in. And that will bring you to the end of the course. There is no more test. There is no more final exam. So instead of a final exam, work on that project.